This trend is killing single-player games.
Dishonored, 88%. Batman Arkham City, 94%. Mass Effect 2, 96%. What do these games have in common? It's not just
They're all old and long forgotten, but fondly remembered.
great Metacritic scores. They're all legendary single-player games made by some of the best developers of their generation. Want to know what else they have in common?
Now, admittedly, nowadays those developers have moved on and now are making slop, so I don't know how I feel about that sentence.
Redfall, 56%.
Nice.
Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, 60%. Anthem, 59%. All the most recent games from their respective
Beautiful.
developers, all critical and commercial flops, and all live service games. So what happened? How could respected names like Arcane Austin, Rocksteady, and BioWare release games this reviled? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and in a
Probably they just got lucky, honestly. For example, Dishonored. Everyone liked Dishonored 1, but remember there's Dishonored 2 that almost no one liked. Same thing with Mass Effect. A couple of those games were really good. And then Andromeda came, and my face got tired, so sorry. And, well, you know the rest.
word, it's live services. Instead of focusing on the single-player games they were so good at, these developers were led astray by the promise of guaranteed profit. But as we figured out in 2024, there are no guarantees in the games industry. Right now, it seems like all a developer can do is stick to what they're good at and hope for the best. But
Hi-Fi Rush, one of the most overrated piles of garbage ever made.
these guys didn't do that. Instead, they decided to follow a dangerous trend that's killing single-player games, and they're paying for it. And don't get us wrong, at GameRanks we are
Almost sounds like ESG score, doesn't it? A little bit of that Vogue sprinkle here, a little bit of that diversity here. Oh, look at that! Assassin's Creed Shadows just popped out of Delvin. Oh, man, that's scary stuff, huh?
definitely frustrated and pissed off at the current state of the industry. But it's not like we celebrate gleefully once a once great studio's reputation ends up in the dumps. It sucks. I loved BioWare. And it feels like there has been a pretty fair amount of these types of videos where we're talking about what's wrong with the game. And yeah, it's easy.
Now I'm gonna say one thing. It's pretty cool that a good game is made and the studio does good, but I absolutely have no pity for a studio that makes a good game and then completely just ruins everything for the rest of their lives, okay? I'm not gonna hail them as heroes after they made one good game and then the rest was absolute slop. I'm sorry, I'm just not gonna do it. I have no alliance or allegiance to any game studio, any platform, anything. I'm just a simple consumer that plays things, and if they're good, and I'm happy with that. And if they're bad, well then.
Easy rage bait, but I don't take joy in tearing stuff down.
I do.
Don't take joy wallowing in the filth. Yes, it's sometimes funny
I absolutely do, because that's one way that we make sure that the chance of this happening again kind of lowers down.
to point and laugh, but we are losing great game creators, and I just wish it didn't have to be that way. There's a specter haunting the games industry, a specter called the live service. It's infected the minds of every corporate suit and bean counter, and can you really blame them? They've seen runaway success with games like Fortnite, which is still absurdly popular and makes money hand over fist, and the guys at the top of these publishing companies, they all want a slice of that pie. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. They see the other guy's number go up, so they want their number to go up. The problem
True.
is, all these guys assumed that the pie was infinite, that you'd be able to cut off as many slices as you wanted forever, and it wasn't. There are 8 slices.
The funny part is we already know that this market is not even close to infinite, and we know this for, at least 10 years. At least! When we understood that the live service microtransaction hellscape is never gonna really work.
Of the industry profits pie. Fortnite, GTA Online, Genshin Impact, and Fortnite is another one. Also Fortnite 2 also. I'm going to mention Fortnite one more time to even that out to six pieces of the pie. Everybody else trying to get those 2 pieces, let's just call them the scraps for now. All these guys didn't account for how that was going to shake out, though. They just saw the big hay bales of
Well, to be fair, Fortnite probably makes less money than Genshin Impact. Probably way less, in fact. Fortnite probably doesn't even hold a candle to how much money Genshin Impact makes. Those gacha games are on a different level, okay?
money going to Epic and Rockstar and Blizzard, and they're like, ah, I like money. Hey, people who are doing something that works, stop and try to do what those guys are doing, even though you don't know how to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, the purpose of a business is to generate a profit, after all, especially.
I don't know if Disney agrees with that take any longer. They're kind of okay with burning money, and so is the rest of Hollywood, and, well, anything remotely big in America.
If you're a publicly traded company, and a lot of these companies are, the dirty little secret of the games industry is that success is never guaranteed, though, and there's no simple formula for making a profit. There's just too many random factors that come into play, whether a game is successful or not. But screw that. Well, I'll set all the corporate executives who clearly don't understand, let alone love, video games. In their minds, the real secret to success is to find somebody who's successful and follow them around, which on an individual basis, like, it's good to learn from people, but when you're...
I mean, this take is completely wrong. That actually works, and it's been proven to work, and there's absolutely no downside. People are not going to give a shit about Fortnite if something better than Fortnite comes out, okay? If something does Fortnite better than Fortnite, Fortnite no longer exists overnight.
A business person, you're just ripping somebody else off. It doesn't quite work the same. It doesn't necessarily drop you gently into success land. And that's just what a lot of companies did, or tried to do. EA, Warner Brothers, Activision, Bethesda, Square Enix. They might not have mandated it, but they all wanted their game developer studios to, you know, build some money printing presses. Oh, sorry, I mean games with endless multiplayer elements and lots of microtransactions.
What is this?
Which I can't imagine that ever getting old. The important thing to keep in mind is that the games industry wasn't immediately reacting to Fortnite's success. Almost all of these flops were in development well before Fortnite became the biggest thing in town. Live service was a direction the industry was already going in. Everybody wanted that big hit, and when...
By the way, Fortnite is literally just a copy of PUBG. And PUBG, I think, was a copy of something else. DayZ, or whatever.
Games like Fortnite and GTA Online started dominating the space and publishers started posting record profits, that really accelerated people's plans. To anyone in the know, it sounds insane for a company like Arcane Austin, most famous for their work on Prey, still underrated to this day, to do that. Like Bethesda going, hey, Arcane Austin, we own you, and what we want from you is live service games, when you clearly make immersive sims and do it in a highly specific way that is both critically and commercially well received. And then Microsoft buys them, and Redfall just tanks hard because it's Redfall. And that's the
No, because Bethesda.
the first thing that Microsoft observes. I mean, this is a studio that really knew single-player games. People got jobs at Arcane Austin because they liked that kind of game, because Arcane Austin was famous for it. So everybody at Arcane Austin was really enthusiastic about that kind of game. And yet, in 2018, the same year Fortnite was really taking off, Arcane started work on Redfall, an online-only open-world cooperative shooter. It's easy to just point at ZeniMax or Bethesda and say they forced Arcane into making a bad game. And for the most part, I am going to say that that is most of the problem, particularly with this one. That being said, devs are perfectly capable of making bad decisions on their own. The orders don't always come from the top. When ZeniMax wanted more microtransactions, Doom Eternal did it by shuffling all that stuff off to the multiplayer mode. The game still had a robust single-player component, though. And really, regardless of whose fault it is, Arcane making Redfall proved to be a terrible idea. Right from the start...
Oh, it's Bethesda's fault. We know this is Bethesda's fault. This has been confirmed. Arcane Austin literally reported every single decision they made to Bethesda, and Bethesda was responsible pretty much for everything from start to finish in Redfall. It's hilarious.
The project lacked direction and enthusiasm for pretty much everybody involved, and according to reports, no one at Arcane wanted to make it. And you can just see that in the buggy, half-baked final product. Sources said the whole project was...
Well, if you don't want to make it, how about this? Don't make it a publicly traded company, and then some kind of shithole like Bethesda buys you up. How about magically that, eh?
such a boondoggle that many in the company secretly hoped Microsoft would simply cancel the game after the acquisition. And as much as people used to praise Microsoft's hands-on approach with their studios, they probably should have canceled that game. I think it probably would have been better for everybody because they would have stopped sinking money into it and Arcane Austin would still exist. I mean, not that it really matters anyway, because it's estimated that around 70% of the staff that worked on Prey left the studio by the time Redfall actually shipped. The project was so disheartening to the people who wanted to be at Arcane that they just quit rather than deal with it. Like, they're obviously talented people. It'll be harder for them to bounce back somewhere else, but it's not like they're no
Why would it be harder for them to bounce back if they're all talented people? Interesting.
talent hacks. They will be able to find work. So why not leave? If you're going to be stuck working on something that just kills your will to wake up every day, why stay there? And, you know, because of this, Arcane Austin also struggled to fill empty positions because I don't know how you get people who are like really excited about working in live service games at Arcane Austin, the developer famous for immersive sims. Like, if you say to me, there's a position open at Arcane Austin, I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, they're making a live service game. Oh, well, I'm not going to apply for that. That's how my brain would work if I were them. And live service games are the problem, but they're not the full problem. It's possible for a live service game to be good. Helldivers 2 shows us that in spades. The problem here is forcing single-player devs who are not interested or straight up don't know how to make live service games. That's the problem. That's the biggest.
Oh no! You're at a job. Heavens forbid the job tells you to do something that you don't like. I thought having a job was all about fun, brunch, and yoga quarters or whatever you call it. You know, the life in a day of a Silicon Valley tech firm. You remember those videos? It's kind of funny. Yeah, they suddenly cropped up and everyone's was like, okay, I got my protein potty carne, and now I'm gonna do some yoga and I'm gonna go into the alone capsule because I need to decompress. You know, those people, they're all fired now, by the way. That's why the videos stopped. That's why the videos stopped, because they're all fired now. Because the social media companies, the Silicon Valley BS, understood, wait a minute, why the hell are we paying our employees that work roughly 30 minutes a fucking year for crappy frothy lattes and then some kind of magical fruit yogurt to do nothing? Why? And then they got fired. That is what actually happened, and it's hilarious. We should actually look into that a little bit. It's kind of funny.
Most glaring problem, I think, even more so than the idea that a live service game exists. No type of game.
Yeah, remember, boys, if you're a normal person who has an average 9 to 5, and if your boss tells you you need to do this and you don't like it, tell them that that's not how life should work and you should not do things that you don't like. And then he's gonna obviously respect your opinion, not make you do it. That's how this works, yeah.
Game is automatically good or bad, but it is automatically bad to try to get somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't want to do something to try to do the thing, because that thing is gonna suck. Like, you'd run into this issue with genre changes anyway. Like, imagine taking the Battlefield team at DICE and saying, hey, make Baldur's Gate 4, please. It would probably be a disaster because, I mean, these are multiplayer shooter guys, not systematic RPG guys. The drive and the knowledge just isn't there. And let's even say that they're
well, that's like an extreme example, though.
Excited about it. That could be a project that easily beats them down because they got to learn everything over again. And what we've come to learn in the past few years is that making live service games is hard. Even developers who have successfully done it, like Bungie, they struggle to remain profitable. Destiny 2 is a game.
Bungie struggles to remain profitable because Bungie is a bunch of blabbering morons. If you're a new player and you come into Destiny, the game literally tries to make your experience as bad as possible with the worst tutorials and everything possible. Okay? There are still tutorial missions that are bugged and soft lock you, and then you need to Google how to get out of it. This has been the situation for years. Okay, Bungie's struggling because they pretty much have said, hey, everything you have here, everything you have bought no longer exists. Okay? And for the new players, you need to buy all of this stuff that's probably not going to exist in a month because we're going to sunset everything. And your new player experience, well, here's 15 systems, and we're not going to tell you anything about them or which one actually is important. Go off yourself. That's why Bungie isn't successful. And also, Bungie's bogus fuck. Like, I mean, have you seen Lightfall? Jesus.
Game characterized by crisis. It's a game that always seems like it's on the verge of completely breaking down. There are times when things are great, like with the Witch Queen, and then there's times when things are terrible and no one is happy with Destiny 2, like with Lightfall. I mean, in general, Destiny 2's been a success, but you'd never know it from the community at times. The problem with live service games is they require a constant stream of updates to stay afloat, and that means they need a constant stream of labor, and that means you're never done with them. Ever. And it's a delicate balance. You have to be...
Oh, by the way, this is the reason why a lot of people started wanting to do live service. Because when the first true live service games actually started popping off, well, there were no other live service games. So it was great for the live service games. This new thing, how you can play games. And, you know, you're getting like a content update like once in 6 months, right? Or something like that if you're lucky. Yeah, nowadays you need large content updates roughly every, 3 months? Otherwise you're completely screwed. So there's less money in it in general. There's more labor in it than it was previously. But when this popped off, everyone was like, holy, look at these live service games. They're making so much money. And that's no longer the case.
Satisfying, but not quite satisfying enough to be done. Like, I will go ahead and say this. That's not automatically bad. Generally, it turns out bad, but I'll again point to Helldivers 2. They get it right. It's worth continuing to play it on an ongoing basis because it is just satisfying enough to not be satisfying, but be satisfying. I know that sounds ridiculous, but still, that is an extremely difficult balancing act. A dance with many delicate steps, one in which a single mistake could send the dancer flying, landing right on their face. And that allegory took the extent of my dancing knowledge. You're welcome. Like, take Anthem. It's another example of a game where BioWare just didn't understand how to make a live service game. Flat out. It was a loot game where nobody was allowed to mention Destiny 2 during development. BioWare was so desperate.
Didn't the game literally get made in like 1 year because no one had any clue what they're doing?
To avoid comparisons to other games, but instead of doing something unique, it just meant that the game fell into the same pitfalls that other developers had run into and learned to avoid years ago. Basic game design decision problems pop up because, quote, old-style AAA multiplayer game sensibilities tend to fly in the face of the realities of live service games. Anthem, The Avengers, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, all of these games are built like single-player games with a level of fidelity.
No, all these games are just bad. Like, Suicide Squad is literally a complete nightmare.
Which is fine for a single campaign with a beginning, middle, and end, but it's...
No, this is not fine for a single... Dude, if someone gave me Suicide Squad single-player game, I would still be like, Jesus, I don't want to play this garbage. The combat feels bad. The city is a mess. Like, who made anything of this? It's just painful even to look at. I would not be fine with a Suicide Squad single-player game. It sounds atrocious.
It's kind of a problem when the developers are expected to continue the story forever. Either these games end up feeling hollow and incomplete from the start, with developers cutting content from the main game and slowly sprinkling it out in content updates, or the live service aspect just barely exists, with the game going months on end without updates. Either direction can kill a community. And another thing that a lot of these developers failed to take into account was the community aspect. For a live service game to thrive, it needs an active and engaged community. According to whoever you talk to, whales are responsible for 60 to 70% of the revenue in every game. But without the community, without the people there, the whales have nothing to do. It's something that executives just flat out don't understand. They think, oh, well, it's like just cater to the whales. Give them exactly what they want and screw everyone else. It leads to decisions that can be very political or pandery, and a game never builds a community because no one wants anything to do with it except for a very specific type of person who might be willing to give money based on the appeasement of their sensibilities.
Yeah, that sounds stupid.
That's a highly specific example of the community problem that these developers have, but it goes out to be much more broad. Think about the other pie, the player, their time and their money. Finding a player who loves a game long enough to play it endlessly is one thing. Convincing them to play a few at once, that's tough. We all have obligations in life, jobs.
There's still like 70 people playing Suicide Squad currently, so I mean, you can find those people for anything.
School, family, hygiene, physical and mental health, cheeses from various countries. There's a lot of different cheeses. I've probably had 9 of them. There is a lot to experience in life, and some of it you have to do, some of it is optional, but it all takes time. You can't exactly mainline Destiny or World of Warcraft and Warframe and Fortnite and play Diablo's new season and be a productive member of society all at once.
Well, most people choose to not be productive members of society. That's a pretty easy one for a lot.
It's not going to happen. I'm sure some of you are going to say that you can, but you can't. You can't. Don't try to do that. It will probably kill you. Like, we talk about crunch in game development, but what about on the consumer end? They're asking us to do crunch, except for they want us to pay them. The reality of life is that adding another live service to your plate is a tough sell, especially if that game releases as a mess or doesn't
Oh god, 76.
have like a good content roadmap, or, you know, any of the many live service problems we've talked about over the last few years. Like in Redfall, you can see a kind of glimmer of the old Arcane in some of the world design, or in Suicide Squad there's hints of the Rocksteady we all know and love in certain set pieces. But with these games, their unique vision was sacrificed to chase a trend. When you try to please everyone, you can end up pleasing no one. In fact, it's much more likely than pleasing everyone. And it didn't have to be this way. Again, there are good live service games, even ones with solid single-player components, like take GTA Online. GTA 5 is still there, it's playable, and the modes are completely separate and don't interfere with each other. It's kind of a drag that Rockstar gave up on some pretty amazing sounding DLCs starring Trevor as a secret agent for the single-player game, and instead dedicated all their time to GTA.
We missed out on Trevor as a Oh my god, this is so horrible. Now that I didn't know it's Trevor. I love Trevor. Trevor's the best guy. Man.
Online, but the core game is still there, and it's still excellent.
I'm sad now. Oh man.
The same seems like it's going to be true for GTA 6. It seems like they're following that mode. Even if the single-player game turns out being a loss.
How the fuck are they following that? We don't know a lot about GTA 6 currently. And GTA 6 will cost more than $1 billion in making. So the single player is going to probably be, I don't know, like 50 hours of gameplay. I love GTA 5 single player. Didn't play a lot of the multiplayer. Most people, by the way, did not play a lot of the multiplayer. They played the single player story and then the multiplayer. But the thing about the multiplayer in GTA, why it's actually fair, is because they don't take anything from the single player away to the multiplayer. The single player is single player, the multiplayer is multiplayer.
Leader to get people in the door for GTA Online 2, or whatever they want to call it. The fact is, GTA 6 is going to be GTA 6. But all these devs had to go live service on their most recent games, and all to their ruin. Arcane Austin was closed. BioWare has been mostly silent, other than releasing a few concept art compilations doubling his trailer.
Listen, if some studio just, shuts down suddenly, like BioWare or whatever, even Bethesda, for example, someone's going to take that place. Someone new is going to come out and take their place. Someone's going to buy the rights to the IPs that they own, and it's going to be fine. We're not talking about full-blown extinction here. We're talking about a studio shutting down and no one giving a shit.
trailers since 2019, and they lost a lot of their key figures. We don't know what's going to happen to Rocksteady after the failure of Suicide Squad, but that game was
Hopefully they shut down.
specifically called out as a failure by Warner Brothers Discovery, and it's unlikely that the planned content for the game is going to all come out, and who knows where they're going to be in a year.
Oh no, so you're telling me we're not gonna get another reskin version of the Brainiac fight? Oh no. How will I live with myself now?
Where they're going to be in a year. Other studios have suffered too. Platinum's reputation was damaged after the abysmal Babylon's Fall. I just assume that there's some kind of contractual obligation with that travesty because it makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah, Kamiya stopped working at Platinum, but that doesn't mean every single person with the sensibilities left. In fact, I'd wager there are a lot more people there that understand how to make games. What the hell got them involved in Babylon's Fall?
I mean, the brutal reality is sometimes in a company, it is one person literally holding everything above water.
Every time we bring that one up, I'm just beyond frustrated with it. But I'll say this, out of the primarily single-player studios that made a live service push, Naughty Dog is probably the one that got out unscathed because they did the sensible thing and just canned The Last of Us Factions 2.
Isn't there like a Naughty Dog interview about how they're gonna ruin everything in the future?
Still cost the studio years of wasted time that could have been better spent focusing on what they're good at, but at least they're not stuck supporting a game they have no ability to keep running for years on end. That's the real issue with live service games. They're very risky propositions. Even when they're being made by developers who know exactly what they're doing, there's a good chance the game will fail, not find an audience.
Bethesda doesn't know what they're doing. That's part of the problem. They're completely clueless nowadays what they are even supposed to do.
Or just burn up too much money. So what chance does a developer with no experience with these types of games have? Like, they're trying to get by on the goodwill from their previous games and their AAA developer status, but that's just not enough. If these devs had just stuck to what they're good at, they'd probably be turning a profit. Would it be all the profit? No. But again, there is a specter haunting the games industry. And when you can't get all the profit, it's just not good enough for some publishers and studio heads. Ultimately, the mindless pursuit of profits over rational business planning is the real problem here. And you could ask anyone but a studio head or one of these business executives running a publisher, anyone else, ask any other person. They'll tell you maybe we should have a plan. But for them, there is no plan. The live service game is basically like oil in them dar hills. We don't have a plan. We're just gonna.
Well, live service games are better for stock. It is what it is.
Set a bunch of people loose with pickaxes and hope somebody comes back with oil or gold or diamonds or something. Whatever. It's whatever's worth money. Just bring it back. No, they should have a plan. And the plan should maybe involve using people's talents and skills that have been established to make things that people want. And again, I realize that it's easy to take a big old dump on live service games, and I will continue to do that. But it's not just live service games. The industry feels like it's in a free fall. But the thing is, it's not true everywhere. Over in Japan, Capcom has enjoyed its 7th straight year of record profits. And they've been putting out a solid mix of live service and single-player games. Nintendo doing the same thing by sticking to, what they know how to do. They're not throwing everything out the window because they see something shiny. That's exactly what all of these other publishers and developers are doing, though, when they're trying to make something that they just don't know how to do. It's a risky business to make games. There's always going to be backfires, even when you're rationally planning things, and the result is killing or damaging the reputation of these great studios that some of the best single-player games ever have come out of. Looking back on this whole thing, these studios would have been better off just going to the casino and putting the budgets of these games on black. They could have turned a profit. A lot of this was just short-term thinking and trying.
Again, if this is true, how do we explain, again, Dishonored? How do we explain Dishonored 1 being good and then everyone who has played Dishonored 2 wanting to forget it exists? It was the same thing. Lightning in a bottle, that's how you explain this stuff. Okay? They were never that talented. They never knew really what they were doing. They just did a thing and it luckily turned out fine. Okay? We know that it's true that you can't replicate these sort of successes. Look at World of Warcraft. How old that game is. And yet no one has been able to mimic it. And not for the lack of trying. A lot of people have tried to mimic it, but for some reason it never works out. That's because, again, we don't know how to do these things. We don't really understand them. Anyway, that was Gamer Ranks. Squizzer says, bye.